True, nervous. Very, very dreadfully nervous. I had been and I am, but why will you say that I am mad? The disease had sharpened my senses, not destroyed, not dulled them. Above all was sense of hearing acute. I heard all the things in the heaven and the earth. I heard many things in hell. How then I am mad? Hearken and observe how healthily, how calmly, and I can tell you the whole story. It is possible to say how first the idea entered my brain, but once conceived it haunted me day and night. Object there was none, passion there was none. I loved the old man, he had never wronged me. He had never given me insult. For his gold I had no desire, I think it was his eye. Yes, it was this. He had the eye of a vulture, a pale blue eye with a film over it. Whenever it fell upon me, my blood ran cold, and so by degrees, very gradually, I made up my mind to take the life of the old man, and thus rid myself of the eye forever. Now this is the point. You fancy me mad. Madmen know nothing, but you should have seen me. You should have seen how wisely I proceeded, with what caution, with what foresight, and with what dissimulation. I went to work. I was never kinder to the old man than during whole week before killed him. And every night about midnight, I turned the latch of his door and opened it, oh so gently, and then when I made an opening sufficient for my head, I put in a dark lantern all close that no light should out, and then I thrust in my head. Oh, you would have laughed to see how cunningly it thrust in. I moved it slowly, very, very slowly, so that I might not disturb the old man. It took me an hour to place my whole head within the opening so far that I could see him lay upon his bed. Would a madman have been so wise as this? And then when my head was well in this room, I undid the lantern cautiously, and I did just so much that a single thin ray fell upon the vulture eye, and this is I did several long nights. Every night just at midnight, but I found the eye always closed, and so it was possible to do work, for it was not the old man who vexed me, but his evil eye. And every morning when the day broke, I went boldly into the chamber and spoke courageously to him, and calling him by the name in hearty tone, and inquiring how he passed the night. So you see, he would have been a profound old man indeed to suspect that every night just at 12 I look in upon him while he is asleep.
Upon the eighth night, I was more than usually cautious in opening the door. I watched minutes' hand moves more quickly than did mine. Never before that night had I felt the extent of my own powers, of my sagacity. I could scarcely contain my feelings of triumph. To think that there I was opening the door, little by little, and he not even to dream of my secret deeds or thoughts. I fairly cackled at the idea, and perhaps he heard me, for he moved on the bed suddenly, as if startled. Now you may think that I drew back, but no. His room was as black as pitch, with the thick darkness, for the shutters were closed, fastened, through fears or robbers, and so I knew that he could not see the opening of the door, and I kept pushing in on steadily. I had my head in and was about to open my lantern, when my thumb slips upon the thin fasten, and the old man sprang up in bed, crying out, "Who's there?" I kept quite still and said nothing. For a whole hour I did not move a muscle, and in the meantime I did not hear him lie down. He was still sitting up in the bed listening. just as I have done night after night. Hearken to the dead watches in the wall. Recently I heard a slight groan, and I knew it was the groan of mortal terror. Teka lang. It was not a groan of pain or of grief. Oh no! I was the low stifled sound that arises from the bottom of the soul when overcharged with awe. I knew the sound well. Many a night, just at midnight, when all the world slept, it has welled up from my own bosom, deepening with its dreadful echo the terrors that distracted me. I say I knew it well. I knew what the old man felt, and pitied him. Although I cackled at heart, I knew that he had been lying awake ever since the first slight noise. When he had turned in the bed, his fear has been ever since growing upon him. He had been trying to fancy them causeless, but could not. He had been saying to himself, "It is nothing, the wind in the chimney. It is only a mouse crossing the floor." Or, "It is merely a cricket which had made a single chirp." Yes, he had been trying to comfort himself with these suppositions, but he had found all in vain, because death, in approaching him, had stuck with his black shadow before him, and enveloped the victim, and it was the mournful influence of the unperceived shadow that caused him to feel, although he neither saw nor heard, to feel the presence of my head within the room.
When I had waited a long time, very patiently without hearing him light down, I resolved to open a very little crevice in the lantern. So I opened it. You cannot imagine how still hilly until a length, a simple ray, like the thread of the spider, shot from out the crevice and fell full upon the vulture eye. It was open, wide open, and I grew furious as I gazed upon it. I saw it with perfect distinctness, all a dull, with a hideous veil over it that chilled the very marrow in my bones. But I could see nothing else of the old man's face or persons, for I had directed the ray as if by instinct, precisely upon the down spot. And have I not told you that what you mistake for madness is but over acuteness of the sense? Now, I say, there came to my ears a slow, dull, quick sound, such as a watch makes when involved in cotton. I knew, I knew that sound well, so it was the beating of the old man's heart. Increased my fury as the beating of drum simulates the soldier into courage. But even yet, I refrained and keep still. I scarcely but breathed. I held the lantern motionless. I tried how steadily I could maintain the ray upon the eve. Meantime, the hellish statue of the heart increased. It grew quicker and quicker and louder every instant. The old man's terror must have been extreme. It grew louder, I say louder, every moment. Do you mark me well? I have told you that I am nervous, so I am, and now the dead hour of the night. Amid the dreadful silence of that old house, so strange and noisy as this excited me to uncontrollable terror. Yes, yet for some minutes longer I refrained and stood still, but now beating grew louder. I thought the heart must burst, and now I knew anxiety seized me. The sound would be heard by neighbor. The old man had come with a loud yell. I threw open the lantern and leaped into the room. He shrieked once only. In an instant, I dragged him the floor. To pull the heavy but over him, I then smiled gaily. To find deed so far done, but for many minutes the heart beat on with muffled sounds. This, however, did not vex me. It would not be heard through the wall. I think it increased. The old man was dead. I removed the bed and not be heard, and examined the corpse. Yes, he was stone dead. I placed my hand upon the heart and held it there many minutes. There was no pulsation. He was stone dead. His eve would trouble me no more.
If still you think me mad, you will think so no longer when I describe the wise precautions I took for the concealment of the body. The night waned, and I worked hastily but in silence. First of all, I dismembered the corpse. I cut off the head and the arms and the legs, then took up 3 planks from the flooring of the chamber, and deposited all between the scantlings. Then replaced the board so cleverly, so cunningly, that no human eye, not even his, could have detected anything wrong. There was nothing to wash out, no stain of any kind, no blood spot whatever. I had been too wary for that. A tub had cut hole. When I had made an end of these labors, it was 4 o'clock, still dark as midnight. As the bell sounded the hour, there came a knocking at the street door. I went down to open it with a light heart. For what had I now to fear? There entered 3 men, who introduced themselves with perfectly suavity. As officers of the police, a shriek had been heard by a neighbor during the night. Suspicion of foul play had been aroused. Information had been lodged at the police office, and they had been deputed to search the premises. I smiled, for what had I to fear? I bade the gentleman welcome. The shriek, I said, was my own in a dream. The old man I mentioned was absent in the country. I took my visitors all over the house. I bade them search well. I led them at length to his chamber. I showed them his treasures secure, undisturbed. In the enthusiasm of my confidence, I brought chairs into the room and desired them here to rest from their fatigues, while I myself, in the wild audacity of my perfect triumph, placed my own seat upon the very spot beneath which reposed the corpse of victim.
The officers were satisfied. My manner had convinced them. I was singularly at ease. They sat, and while I answered cheerily, they chatted of familiar things, but ere long I felt myself getting pale, and wished them none. My headache, and I fancied I ringing in my ears, but still they sat and still chatted. The ringing becomes more distinct. It continued and became more distinct. I talk more daily to get rid of the feelings, but it continued and gained definiteness until at length I found that noise was not within my ears. No doubt, I now grew very pale, but I talk more fluently and with heightened voice. Yet the sound increased, and what could I do? It was a low, dull, quick sound, not such a sound as a watch makes when developed in cotton. I gasped for breath, and yet the officers heard not. I talked more quickly, more vehemently, but the noise suddenly increased. I arose and opened about triples and high up and with violent gesticulations, but the noise steadily increased. Why would they began? I paced the floor to and fro with heavy strides, as a quick, excited to fury by the observation of the man. But the noise steadily increased. Oh God, what could I do? I found a rave, a sword, swung the chair upon which I had been sitting, and grated it upon the boards. But the noise arose overall and continually increased. It grew louder, 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 and still the man chatted pleasantly and smiled. Was it possible they do not? Almighty God. No, no. They heard the suspected. They knew they were making a
Mockery of horror. This I thought and this I think. But anything was better than this agony. Anything was more tolerable than this decision. I could bear those hypocritical smiles no longer. I felt that I must scream or die. And now again. Hark louder, 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 louder. Villains, I shrieked. Reassemble no more. I admit the dead. Tear up your flanks. Here, here, it is beating of his hideous heart. The end.